All right. Welcome back. We're live with David Green. David, how are you?
I'm great, Al. We were just saying backstage, weren't we, that usually I'm over there with you at the moment in San Francisco, down in Santa Cruz,
Yeah.
doing this live. So
Yeah.
I much prefer to be there, given the weather in the UK at the moment.
Well, I gotta say, selfishly, I miss you. I wish that were the case. I think it's become clear to most, if not all of us, the importance of human connection, little things like handshakes to hugs to sharing a beer. It's something that I miss. And, you know, uh, by the way, you and I have historically done dry January. I've failed on that, so I don't know about you. But in any event, I think we're trending in a positive direction. That's my, 2 cents. How's it going for you over there in the UK?
Yeah, I've not made dry January either, although it's been reasonably dry. In the process of finishing a book manuscript, so alcohol is required at certain times.
Well, I mean, David, I got to say this. We're going on what 5-6 years of not only professional association but friendship, and to see the elevation of your contribution to the space is awesome. And I use that word reservedly and appropriately. So thank you for what you do. And I know kind of behind the curtain insofar as the effort that you put in, and the energy and creativity. So just know you're seen and you're appreciated. So thank you for that. And I really like that. There's no one more qualified on the planet, in my view, to talk about the current state, because you have a very diverse view of what's happening, and as well as some ideas of where we're going, which have proven to be quite accurate over time. So again, thank you. So what do you got in store today?
Well, basically, I thought it'd be helpful to looking at the current state. Really, is just highlight some research that we did at Insight222 towards the back end of last year. Testing some hypotheses that we had, which we probably, a hypothesis that people analytics is growing. We're likely to prove that one, and we did. Right. But some other stuff there. I get asked a lot around, how should I set up the team? What skills? What do I need as part of a people analytics team? What should we focus on? Those sorts of questions get you, and I know you get a lot as well. So to walk through some of the findings and talk about what that means in terms of maybe an operating model, and a way of working to try and deliver value, and have some fun. So but yeah, it's fairly short, and actually I'll start off by actually reminiscing on those 6 years, I think it is now, that we've kind of been doing the PAFOW stuff. Well, I've been doing some of the PAFOW stuff with you. So yeah, right. It's flown by, as it were.
It has. It absolutely has. So I'll get out of your way for time being, and then we'll come back and have a chat. That sounds good?
Okay. And now we've got to rely on me doing the technology. So let's hope that works. But yeah. And also, I just want to say, it's very kind, the kind words that you shared with people. Saying back to you, the work that you're doing in this space, particularly around the people data for good, and actually, helping people to think beyond people analytics just to something that benefits leaders. I think is really important work, and certainly something that's influenced me, and I know many of the people online today and who've attended PAFOW conferences over the years. So keep doing what you do.
Thank you. I really appreciate it. All right, sir. All right, have at it, and I'll see you in a few
minutes. What happens when I share screen. Okay, hope it works. Speak to you soon.
Bye.
So yeah, it's always a pleasure to participate in a PAFOW event, and as I said there, kind of been doing that for 6 years now as an attendee, a co-host, a speaker, a co-moderator. So it's great, and and it normally would all be in San Francisco at the moment. So but we're not. We're watching from our home offices, I guess, mostly at desks around the world. So welcome everyone. When I was thinking about how to start this, I actually wanted to go back to something that Al said at that first PAFOW conference that I attended. I think we've long talked about people analytics being an opportunity for HR. But I really like the way that Al framed it as it's not just an opportunity, it's a responsibility for HR. And I don't think, everything that's happened in the last year tells us that it's a real responsibility as well, to provide value to people, to help people through what has been a very challenging 12 months and likely to be another challenging 12 months ahead, I think, as hopefully the vaccine gets rolled out around the world. The field has moved on tremendously since 2016, when I first went to a PAFOW conference. And, I would probably add that not only responsibility, I think it's a necessity for HR as well. I think a good CHRO knows now that if they don't have people analytics as part of their armory, then they're really not delivering the value that they could be delivering, not just to leaders, but also to managers and employees in the workforce as well. And at Insight222, which I helped form back in 2017, we work with 75, I think it's 75 now, global organizations and support the people analytics leader and their team to deliver more value. And, we had a couple of hypotheses that we wanted to test last year. One was around the growth of people analytics. Secondly, is around what key focus areas were for people analytics. We had a hypothesis that people were moving to stuff that wasn't just benefiting HR, but was benefiting the business as a whole. So we put together, we did some research. You can read that research. There's a link there at the bottom. Go onto the Insight222 site, and then there's the page on Insight222 research, and you can get hold of this research there as well. And we did it during the early stage of the pandemic, and I think there was certainly an element around how HR and more specifically people analytics teams were responding to the pandemic. We took data from 60 global organizations. These are all organizations that have established people analytics teams, some for more than 5 years as well. And those, as I said, those organizations, big organizations, as you can see by the number of employees they collectively serve and the countries of which they operate in. And we looked at three main topics, I'd say. One was around the composition of the people analytics function, i.e. how are companies organizing their people analytics teams and interfacing with the business. Two, around the growth, and look at a number of areas around that. And the third one, a little bit of it around the investment in technology. So let's start. So first thing, finding people analytics is growing. Well, who'd have thought? But interestingly, given that we conducted this research during the early stage of the pandemic, when I think there was a particular amount of uncertainty around a lot of hiring freezes, companies even looking at efficiencies as well. And in these organizations, the people analytics teams were still growing, even in that early stage of the pandemic. But there was a feeling that the people analytics would grow more in the next 18 to 24 months. And even applied in organizations that were shrinking the overall size of HR as well. So, one example I spoke to recently, the people analytics team is doubling. I know it's not doubling from 1 to 2 either. It's doubling from sort of 15, 16 to just over 30, whilst at the same time they're shrinking the overall size of HR. So that's certainly quite interesting. We did some interesting analysis around the number of people in the people analytics team to the number of employees, and the number up there is for a function of less than 5 years old. So one people analytics team member to every 4,400 employees. We found that number went down the longer the team has been established, and then the younger a team, it slightly went up. So again, quite interesting, and actually based on, there were still variances within different sectors as well. We found the average size of the people analytics team was around 14 people, and that leading teams are increasing that part of their remit or their scope. So strategic workforce planning in particular, employee experience, two areas that we see increasingly coming into the responsibility of people analytics teams. That number of 14 will vary a lot, of course, depending on size of organization, sector, but also whether people analytics is also responsible for reporting, which isn't always the case. And finally, in terms of reporting line, get asked a lot, where should people analytics report in the organization? And actually, of those 60 organizations, 75% the people analytics leader either reports to the CHRO, which is actually just over 1 in 5 organizations, and most of the rest are reporting to CHRO -1. Certainly would recommend that the higher up in the HR organization the people analytics leader and team report to, then the likelihood that they're going to be delivering more value rather than hidden away somewhere in some pocket of HR. So that's the growth side. Investment in technology is also increasing. Again, I'll go through what those first waves are in a little minute there, but 54% has said of the organizations that we spoke to said that they were intended to increase their spend on technology overall, and that 81% were particularly going to be investing in that third wave. So obviously we're going to be meeting a lot of technology partners over the next 2 days, and certainly I'd recommend that Priyanka Mehrotra from Red Thread is going to provide much more context around the people analytics technology market, I think tomorrow around this time. First wave is kind of the core HR stuff, the Workdays and the Success Factors and the Oracles, of course. I was actually quite surprised that 17% of those 60 organizations don't have a core HR system still. The second wave is around the analytics and the dashboarding products. So obviously companies that people know, such as Visio, Cruncher, and One Model, and others in there. And then the third wave was particularly around O&A, passive O&A technologies, employee listening, and again, another emerging area is technologies that support people analytics teams around analyzing skills. So 3 areas there that seem to be particularly growing. The next question was really, again, to try to test a hypothesis around where people analytics is actually adding the most value. So the question that we asked was, what are the top 3 areas in your company where people analytics is adding the most value? And I think this shows the progression of the field over the last few years, really, that business and strategy topics came out on top. So this is things like sales effectiveness, managing compliance, managing risk, conduct, culture is in there as well. Actually came out on top. And if we conducted this survey a couple of years ago, I think the results would be very different. The next few areas there, from employee experience and well-being down to diversity and inclusion, very much wider business focus areas than just HR areas as well. So interesting that they came next. And other, I'd say, more traditional focus areas of people analytics, certainly if we go back 3 to 5 years, looking at attrition, looking at areas around recruitment, looking at areas around compensation, perhaps, although they are important, these are now more contributing factors to a bigger effort to look at business areas and obviously areas that impact on the workforce as well. So quite interesting around that. And what we're seeing really is that this is kind of changing the way that people analytics organizations are set up and also how they interact with the business. So this is like, again, this is described in detail in the report. So what we're seeing really is a value chain emerging as to how the leading teams are organizing themselves, and the operating model or the type of operating model that we would recommend based on to drive that. So, if we look at the left-hand side of that image there around client drivers, it's very much around focusing on business demand, so interacting directly with business, understanding key challenges of stakeholders and leaders within the business, and then aligning the business strategy with the people and HR strategy. And then on the right-hand side, the outcomes that you can deliver from that, in terms of financial terms, but also in terms of experiences for employees and managers, and driving organizational change as well. And what we're seeing, and certainly what we're recommending there, is kind of 3 engines, or three engines within an operating model. One is a demand engine there. You can see team 1 of consultants that work directly with the business to identify and prioritize the most important work. Those of you working in teams will know that there's so much that you can do, but prioritizing the work that's the most important to the business is how you can end up delivering better outcomes and more value to the organization. In the middle, I guess, is the heart, the solution engine of analysts, data scientists, behavioral scientists, stewards, to deliver insights and recommendations, provide governance around data, technology, and ethics, of course, thinking of that people, data for good theme, and partnering with analytics colleagues across the business. So leveraging data, technology, resources maybe from elsewhere to support the work, and really try and drive those outcomes and understand what it is that you're trying to solve for. And then the third engine, the product engine, is something I know, Al, you wrote, and we'll talk about this, I'm sure, afterwards, a couple of years ago, when you were talking about the evolution of people analytics to a 3.0, I think you called it. And and this is quite new in many organisations, and hasn't even occurred in many organisations with people analytics teams. So this is a team containing designers, product engineers, change managers. So to design, build, and iteration and implementation of valuable analytics offerings at scale across the enterprise. And if in terms of bringing that to life, a really great example, and a company that talks a lot about what they're doing in this area is IBM, where I spent a couple of very happy years. And I think this is a really good example. This is an example that Diane Gerson, who's just retired as CHRO, actually shared with me on the podcast that I do towards the end of last year. It's a great example of how analytics, you link analytics can link together different silos, traditional silos in HR, such as learning and careers and workforce planning, and at the same time deliver value for the business, but also a memorable employee experience as well. So, in short, Your Learning is IBM's homegrown, personalized talent marketplace. It brings together learning, internal opportunities, and career development. And actually, in the podcast, Diane shared with me that the NPS score for Your Learning is, I think it's 53, probably higher now, which obviously is an extremely high NPS score. And it kind of starts from understanding skills demand data. So the people analytics team have inferred the skills and related proficiency levels of all 350,000 plus IBMers. When they actually went out to IBMers to validate those skills, 80% of the population validated that as 100%. And as you know, if you're working in people analytics role and you're trying to use skills data, if you can eliminate that human bias by asking the employee themselves for their skills data, then that's good. And obviously, this is something that you can scale and do far quicker. They also help their employees really understand the value of their skills in the marketplace and in IBM by pulling in external data as well around skills. What skills have you got as an employee versus the skills that might be required, certainly required in IBM, and almost kind of getting to that area where skills is acting almost as a currency and driving things like reward and pay increases and everything. So what IBMers are able to do there is see skills demand kind of objectively through the data, make sense of their current skill set and its durability, which is of course important. And then the final piece is kind of to connect the dots between skills demand, internal skills supply, and closing gaps with powerful addictive learning experiences, which IBM does through Your Learning. So again, as an IBMer, for example, if you've got skills 1 to 4, you will possibly recommended training or learning or even an assignment that will help you develop skills 5 and 6, which will help drive your career within the organization and help close some of the skills gaps that IBM has got as well. And then other opportunities, you'll see career paths within IBM. You'll see internal opportunities that you could, or assignments that you can either apply for now or in a period of time if you are able to acquire an additional skill. So really quite interesting if you think about, again, a company like IBM, huge, undergoing the biggest business transformation in its history, closing the skills gaps that you've got to in order to help to achieve that is massive. So just an example of how you can really scale analytics using that type of operating model. So everyone knows how to get in touch with me anyway, so I'll stop sharing that.
You were fantastic as usual. And I have to say one thing. The slides are exceptional. I mean, the visualizations, we'd often talk about visualizing data. We talk about data-driven storytelling, all this stuff. I just want to compliment whoever's doing your slides and
not me.
And I was just sitting there like, damn, that's good. But there's a lot of things that have emerged from that. And, obviously you're working with larger enterprises primarily. However, when you talk about groups of 14, right? And it's also the case that there has been a gap that we've long talked about between the demand, both the conscious demand for people-driven or people analytics and the resulting insights, and the capacity of an organization to deliver on that demand. And what I think we're getting better at is understanding the opportunities that are present, not only among executives, but HR business partners, sometimes even people managers or people leaders. So do you have any insights into that? Because obviously we have people attending today from all different sizes of organizations. I think there's a general consensus. I mean, if you look at research from the Corporate Executive Board or Corporate Leadership Council going back 20 years, HR data and analytics are top 1, 2, or 3 priorities. So it's not surprising, but at the same time, many organizations just haven't built the business case for additional resources, particularly in the time of COVID. So, what's some insights or ideas that you have around, that about matching the demand internally with what it really takes to deliver on that?
Yeah, I mean, obviously there's, I think the thing I should stress, and maybe should have stressed there, there's not a one size fits all at the end of the day. I mean, if you're a company of 500 people, you're not going to have a people analytics team of 14. I wouldn't have thought, but I think generally it doesn't matter how big the team you've got is or how long you've been established. I think the most important thing is to make sure that the work is focused on the most important things of the challenges facing the business. And the best way to do that is to interface with the business. HR is not separate to the business anyway, and it seems to be sometimes, we must talk to the business. Well, HR is part of the business, but so I think talking to business leaders and understanding their challenges, and actually what that means is you're going to have choices. Do we do project? Do we do this work or do we do that work? And trying to get away, and I know it's difficult, trying to get away from just requests for data. Trying to understand what's the underlying question behind the request. And that's where I think good consulting skills do come in, I think.
Speaking of that, because that's obviously what you all do at Insight222, and I have long advocated that whether it be an analyst, people analytics professional, even HR business partner and others, have the conversation first, and that can help focus on the analytics projects that need to be done and how they can be done. There are many out there who are saying, well, I can't have that discussion yet because I don't have what they're asking for. And there's this kind of chicken and the egg thing that starts to happen, and then nothing happens because there's this kind of paralysis that emerges. What's your thoughts and commentary or advice around getting over that dynamic, and particularly at scale? Because when you have 50 100 HR business partners who have different needs, clustering those needs might help focus people analytics projects. So what are your thoughts there?
I mean, you've said, I've heard you say it, but I mean, don't be afraid to start small. Just pick one or two things. Deliver something. Create some momentum. And you don't try and necessarily do something that's going to benefit the whole organization. And obviously, that's great if you can do that, but it's unlikely in the if you're early stages. So work with finance. You don't let the quest. You're never going to have perfect data. I think that's an important thing to say, isn't it? Our finance doesn't have perfect data. No other part of the business has perfect data. So don't be hamstrung by that. I think a great example really is the work Patrick Coolan does at ABN AMRO. I remember him standing up at a conference 6 or 7 years ago saying, You know, he didn't really believe in this whole maturity model thing that you needed to get all your reporting in place first before you could do analytics. He says, I go to the business and ask them, would they like some insights on what drives sales effectiveness or customer loyalty in certain parts of the bank? And of course, the business is like, yes, well, we've got, we've got the data that we can analyze to do that. Yes, we know we've got to sort out our reporting and bring our systems together so we can create something sustainable for the future. But that doesn't mean we can't be doing that in parallel. And I think that's important because, you got to, I guess, having that little bit of ambition, and I call it bravery, if you want to call it. If you deliver value to senior business executives, then you're more likely to get the investment to sort out your reporting challenges, aren't you? So,
absolutely.
Rather than going to ask for budget to sort out the reporting challenges first. So, yeah, I mean, it's difficult, but I think it can be done.
Well, thank you for that, because that is, I think, a really important mindset to have that is often missed, because there's like, oh gosh, I got to get everything right. I got to get this dashboard, this report, all buttoned up. And it's like, hey, even when it goes there, the internal customer says, so what, this, can you give me more? And if the discussion was had up front, then that can be a more focused effort, and positive things can happen. So thank you for that. As we start to wrap up, I know you have put in a lot of time into this book, and so can you share a little tidbit about it? And because obviously this is going to be next time we get together, it's going to be part of the book tour. so yeah, just share what's that been like, and what we can anticipate, what we can look forward to with it.
Well, it's been hard work. I think it's probably the best thing to say. And I'm sure when it's published and everything else, then I'll paint a much brighter picture. It's hard work. It's hard work, but it's also a great way to learn as well. And the book is due out in June. So I'm writing it with Jonathan Farrar. And thank God I'm not writing on my own, otherwise it never would have come out. But yeah, it's been really interesting. And I'd say the main thing that we can take out of it so far is the work being done across organizations around the world in people activities. Unbelievable. There's some of the practitioners who are leading this charge within their companies are doing some amazing work. And I hope that we capture some of that in the book. I think we have, because we've got a lot of case studies in there, it's been amazing to actually do those interviews and hear in detail some of the work that's being done. So hopefully that gives someone something for people to look forward to.
Hey, I'm looking forward to it. So final question for me. So Insight222 is now going on, 4 years old, and you all have you've done some amazing work. Obviously, the operating model being the latest evidence of that. What's in store for you all, here in 2021 and beyond?
Well, we again, like many organizations, or probably listening, obviously when the pandemic started, everyone, we were worried. It's a fairly young business, but we're growing as an organization. We had two brilliant people start in January, a few weeks ago, and we're looking at hiring a couple more people as well. So I think people analytics was already important. I think it's been elevated further by the pandemic. And I think that the work that our field is doing is getting far more attention at the executive level now. And I think it's starting to open up executives' eyes as to what it can deliver. So by very definition of being in the people analytics space, I think, we're in a really exciting time for the field. And then if we think slightly wider than just beyond the people analytics teams themselves, and we think about HR, and we think about the desire of HR professionals to learn about people analytics and how it can help them in the work that they do and also in their careers. I think the My HR Future platform that we've got that helps HR professionals acquire data-driven and digital skills is, it seems he's really, he's really taking off. And we're not the only company obviously providing that sort of service, but so yeah, it's exciting times. It's busy, and I'm desperately keen to get the book done so we can actually start being a bit more proactive rather than very reactive at the moment. And and for instance, I could spend more time with you over the next 2 days, Al. So
yeah, well, we'll get that in place in the future. Until then, all the best with the book, all the best with the work that you all do over there. Needless to say, I'm a fan, and I'm just, again, I can't. This is heartfelt. I miss you personally. I am really, rooting for you all as an organization, and thank you for your personal contributions to our discipline. So, a great way to kick off this 2 days. So, appreciate you taking the time.
Well, it's always great. It's always a delight to spend time with you, Al. And I think when we finally get together, we're going to have a barrel of beer, not even a beer.
We'll have to allocate appropriate time and start early in the afternoon.
Well, exactly.
All right, my friend. All right, you be well. Bye.
Bye.